get the privilege of speaking with you tonight, but it's part of our Blessed Life series. This is number 7, so we've been doing it for a while. And I get to speak on just part of meeting God again tonight. And I loved what Robbie said earlier about, especially to the youth, you actually have the opportunity to live different in your schools, amongst people, but all of us have that opportunity. All of us, in our workplaces, in our families. We all have the opportunity to live different, and today we're going to talk about forgiveness. And this is a huge part of living different. And so I hope that as I come and I share with you guys today that God just speaks to us. But the first thing on my mind when I got this topic of forgiveness to speak about was I just became really aware of how many people I need to forgive. Like as soon as you start to research and you start to think about forgiveness, all of a sudden it hits you just how broken you are, just how hurt you are, and just how many people there are that you need to forgive. And I live with someone that I need to forgive regularly. And you know, they wake me up every morning, early. And they don't just wake me up like sweetly, they jump on me. And pretty much as soon as they wake me up, they want food. And they want me to feed them. And then, after I've fed them, they still want me to be with them. So even the bathroom is not a safe space. They are in the bathroom when I'm in the bathroom. They're in the lounge room when I'm in the lounge room. When I just want a moment's peace, just to sit down on the couch and just chill out, they climb on me. They want affection from me. And you know what? Then they're hungry again. And I have to feed them again. And you know what? The food that I feed them is never good enough. Normally they want the food off my plate. They contribute nothing to the household, financially. And they wreck my furniture. And I daily need to forgive because I live with this. This is my cat Ernie. And now I've put a few of you in a bit of a conundrum because you've just realized I'm a cat person. I know. So a lot of you now need to forgive me. And I'm sorry for that. Half my life group need to forgive me because I'm a cat person. But guys, just to ease the burden, I also own a dog. Yeah. But now some of the cat people are thinking, well, you basically have no morals then. So now we're in an even worse spot. You see, it's actually really easy to hurt someone. Maybe it's not as easy as me being a cat person or not, but it's actually really easy to hurt someone. You can be hurt by someone doing something, and you can be hurt by someone not doing something. You can be hurt by someone saying something, and you can be hurt by someone not saying something. You can be hurt by people you know and love, and you can be hurt by a complete stranger. Hurt is very real. It happens to many of us. There are people in this room that have suffered great hurt, abuse, rejection, things that just aren't okay. There are people in this room that have been gossiped about, that have been hurt by people's words, that have been rejected. And these things aren't okay. And as I share tonight, I hope that in no way is any hurt diminished or trivialized, but that we start to realize that we serve a loving God who wants to bring healing to our hurt. Because hurt does happen. But because hurt happens, forgiveness also needs to happen. And it's a huge part of our faith. It's a huge part of what God does in us daily. But before I speak about what we want to talk about forgiveness today and what the Lord says in the Sermon on the Mount, I think it's really important that I clarify what forgiveness is and isn't. Because otherwise, as I start to talk about forgiveness and I start to talk about hurt, we actually stop listening because we misunderstand what forgiveness is. And so, forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean that you're instantly back in relationship with someone. In fact, sometimes when we forgive, it's actually not safe for you to be in relationship with someone. Sometimes we need to forgive, but it's not actually okay for us to be with that person. So forgiveness does not actually equal reconciliation, although it opens the door. It opens the door to reconciliation and can be the beginning of it. Forgiveness isn't complete healing. Once again, forgiveness can open the door to healing. And quite frankly, it's a pretty good place to start. But it's not complete healing. You can't just forgive and everything's fine now. Because hurt is real. And people hurt one another. Forgiveness is a choice. It's actually something you have to choose. It's like a will of your heart. Do you know, if you wait till you feel like forgiving, it's very likely you never will. It's actually something you have to choose to do. Forgiveness is also repeatable. You can forgive time and time again, just as Jesus forgives us time and time again. It doesn't have to be just done once, and sometimes we have to repeat forgiveness because hurt is still happening. And sometimes we have to repeat forgiveness just to remind ourselves that we have forgiven. And forgiveness is an act of your own heart. Sometimes we misunderstand and we believe it's between two people, that they'll forgive each other. You don't have to get an apology to forgive. Forgiveness is an act of your heart. It's for you to do. It's your choice. But one of the most important things about forgiveness is that God asks us to do it. You know, right in the Lord's Prayer, when Jesus teaches about prayer, he says, "And forgive us our debts, as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sin, your Father will not forgive your sin." Matthew 6:12-15. See, right here we have a petition and a declaration. We have the petition of, "Lord, would you forgive me?" This is something we're very familiar with, something you've probably prayed often. "Lord, would you forgive me?" We've just had communion, and when we have communion, quite often that is the posture of our heart. "Lord, would you forgive me?" But as written, we get the feeling that we can't pray the first if we're not willing to do the second. Because there's a declaration as well. And the declaration says, "And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." It's like it's saying we already should have done it. As I come to God and petition him for my own personal forgiveness, it's actually sitting right there and he says, "Yes, as you also will forgive." I'm called to do the same in return. In fact, it's almost written like an assumption that I've already done it. Jesus continues, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sin, your Father will not forgive your sin." So this declaration that you have forgiven others holds quite a bit of weight. It's heavy. So I then started to think, is this a matter of salvation? No, it's not. Because for us forgiving others to be a matter of salvation, that would mean that we're saved by works. And we're not saved by works, we're saved by grace. And forgiveness is a grace of the Holy Spirit. So you need to have received the Spirit to be able to forgive out of the grace of the Holy Spirit. So this is not a matter of salvation. This is a matter of, have you truly encountered the loving, forgiving God if you can't do it? If it doesn't compel you to want to forgive. You see, when we encounter his forgiveness, it should well up in us an absolute love and adoration for the one that forgives and cause us to change from the inside out to the point where we then desire to forgive. Freely we have received, so freely we should want to give away. But this isn't always the posture of our hearts. When we have this declaration of forgiveness. It's kind of like God saying, yeah, I'll forgive. How about you? Will you give away what I've given you? The Sermon on the Mount was shared by Jesus, and the words are powerful. And I love how he always says, you've heard it said, but I say. Like he's inviting us into just an encounter with him. We hear this powerful message. It's actually an encounter with Jesus' character. Jesus says to even hate is to murder. To even look is adultery. He says, don't judge. Don't make promises you can't keep. He says, be kind, be generous, be loving. This is actually who Jesus is. It's not just what he's calling us to. It's not just a list of behaviors. It's actually what he lived out. We're engaging with his character as he says these words. And when it comes to forgiveness, he reveals himself again because he calls us to be a people that will be known for how we love one another. And forgiveness is a huge part of that. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches, you've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on your right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, give them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Matthew 5. This seems like a broken kind of justice, right? They slap you, so you let them. They take from you, you let them. We're a people that look for justice. But I think that sometimes our form of justice has gotten a little skewed into us getting what we want. Us getting the outcome that we desire. But maybe eye for eye is justice. But isn't this just a revenge-based concept? You take my eye, I take your eye. You hit me, I hit you. Sounds a little bit like a lot of our car rides. She looked at me, so I hit her. And she hit me, so I hit her back. When does it end? Normally when I stop the car. This is just a broken form of justice. You see, eye for eye was actually created with the intent of feuds not escalating. But without forgiveness, it has no end. Think about some of our war-torn countries. Without forgiveness, the hurt just goes on and on and on. Think about people groups that have been hurt and wronged. People are still suffering the pain and rejection that happened generations, sometimes centuries ago, because of unforgiveness. Because you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. And then the person that got hurt goes, well, I didn't mean to hurt you, but now you've hurt me, so then I need to hurt you. You spoke about me, so now I need to go tell everyone that they spoke about me badly so that they don't speak about me badly, and in turn I'm going to speak about them badly. It just goes on and on and on. Because the cycle doesn't end if you don't enter into forgiveness. But Jesus presents us this creative, this beautiful, this different kind of way of living. You see, our form of justice is soaked in pride. What about my outcome? What about my eye? What about my cheek? What about my coat? Our justice has us thinking about us. And when we think about ourselves, we only tend to think about our own positive outcome. And that normally means a negative outcome for somebody else. But Jesus presents with us here in these beautiful stories a picture of a future with no vengeance at all. Where it's not about eye for eye, but it's about humility and vulnerability. He gives us these three examples of this slap, this coat, and this walking of a mile. And these things would have meant a lot to the people in that time. They would have spoke directly into where they were at as a people. And there's actually an entire sermon that you could do just on these three things and what they actually meant to the people there. And it was really hard to resist going there in this sermon because they're actually a really creative and powerful response to somebody wronging you. And I've got a little bit of more information in your sermon notes, but it doesn't do it justice. But I want to be really clear that when Jesus says, if someone slaps you, turn your cheek, he is not condoning violence and abuse. He is not saying that it's okay for people to hurt you. And if you're in a relationship where you are actually being hurt or you are being abused, I urge you to remove yourself as safely as you can from that situation, because Jesus is not saying that. And there's also information in your church news about that if you need to get help, or you can come and see one of our pastors. Jesus is saying, what would it look like if we responded with humility and vulnerability? What would it look like if we didn't seek revenge, if we didn't look to get ours in every situation, but we actually were humble? Because this is who Jesus is. When you come to him in your sin, does he ask for your eye? When you come to Jesus in your sin, does he say, yeah, you've done that, let me punish you. Let me make sure you know what you did. No. Jesus accepts you. He loves you as you are. As you come to him, as you stand broken, Jesus is accepting you. He chooses humility. But yet we say things like, but Jesus, you don't know what they did. You don't know how they've treated me. And the truth is, no, I don't know what they did. But I know what he did. They mocked him, so he stayed silent. They judged him and questioned him and gossiped about him, and he invited them to dinner. They beat him, and he turned his cheek. They put a cross on his back, and he walked it. And they nailed him on that cross, and he prayed for them. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is the God that we encounter. This is the God that we petition for our own personal forgiveness. This is the God that we come to saying, Lord, would you forgive me? And he says, yes. And will you freely give away what I've given you? See, Jesus was betrayed, he was gossiped about, he was abused, he was ignored, he was rejected, he was hated. And you know what Jesus' justice is in all that? Their salvation. But we quite often want others to know how they hurt us. We want to let them know what they've done, but forgiveness is not dependent on someone coming to you and telling you they're sorry. Forgiveness is dependent on your encounter with him and it causing you to want to give it away. But you know what, church? I know that this is hard to forgive. As I said earlier, many of you have been hurt. Many of you have been disappointed. Many of you have maybe been rejected, ignored, frustrated. And I have a very personal relationship with this topic. I have sat in unforgiveness in a really difficult way. I thought my heart might shatter when I came to a place when I realized that I needed to forgive my sister for dying. Do you know, she drove home tired and she crashed her car and she died. And the reality is that day, in my pride, she ruined my life. That day in my life, everything changed. My expectation of having a great, joyful, happy life ended. My expectation of having two parents that loved me and would take care of me ended. My expectation of having siblings that I would do life with, that I would enjoy, ended. And you know what was the worst part? I was so angry. But on the outside, I looked like this. Because unforgiveness took a hold of my heart and it caused nothing but anger in me. And there's no justice. I can't tell her. She's dead. And the worst part is, I feel bad for even being angry. How can you be so angry at someone for making a mistake and dying? I should just be sad, right? But no, I was angry. I was angry at her. I was angry at my parents. I was angry at the world, and I was a victim now. So I deserve to be angry. I'm allowed to be upset. I'm not getting what I want out of life. But that was soaked in pride. That is soaked in me wanting other people to know how they've hurt me. And then I got angry at myself and I got angry at God. God, how could my life turn out like this? Unforgiveness sits in our hearts and it causes anger and destruction and it destroys our relationships. We start to see people through that view of unforgiveness. My parents were grieving, were hurting, but my unforgiveness said, you're not doing good enough for me. But yet, God met me in my pain, in my hurt, in my disappointment. And I tell you, when you fix your eyes on God, He meets your gaze. And I came to a point where I realized my anger and my disappointment from the life that I wanted, not turning out the way that I wanted. And I came to God and I said, Lord, forgive me. Lord, heal me. Help me. And He always meets us there. And not only did He say, I forgive you, Tria, but He says, do you want to give me the one thing that's causing you pain? And that's that you're holding on to what you need to give away. I needed to forgive. And I forgave. And I forgave again and again and again. But it wasn't until I forgave that healing could begin. That reconciliation could begin. I could now view my parents through their lens of grief and their lens of pain and not through my lens of my pride and what I wanted, my unmet expectations of life. Because unforgiveness is actually sin. And while we choose not to forgive, we're petitioning Jesus to forgive us while we're holding on to the sin that we want Him to forgive us for. And He's called us to be a forgiving people. Ones that choose humility. Ones that choose to recognize that we live in a broken world. That cliche that hurt people is a little bit true. But there's healing for our hurt that He's freely given us. What would it look like, church, if we were not constantly offended? What would it look like, church, if we were forgiving? If when we heard those scriptures like, obey your parents, it didn't cause us to get a little bit angry and a little bit rebellious? What would it look like if we could go through pain and know that people are broken and they are going to hurt us, but He is a forgiving God, and not only will He forgive us, but He can forgive them? What would it look like if we left justice up to the one who is a just judge and didn't try to take it on ourselves? What would it look like if this generation was a generation that were known for how they loved one another? A generation that aren't offended, aren't trying to seek vengeance, aren't trying to prove others wrong, but just humbly bring everything before the Lord. Do you know, if you're going to go out into all the world, people are going to hurt you. People are going to persecute you. People are going to reject you. People are going to judge you. And then on top of that, you've just got what life offers. Just life. So I want to know if we want to be a forgiving people. And the only way we can become forgiving is coming to the one that gives it away for free. The only one that can heal our pain. The only one that understands. I've received so much healing in my life. It's impossible to share with you what God has done. But the one thing I refuse to do is sit in unforgiveness. And so as we were singing before, Spirit move, Spirit move, Spirit move. Would we tonight choose to be a people set apart, a forgiving people?